Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Preeti Ars, Director of the IAAC Literary Festival, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to one of the most anticipated sessions of our lineup. Today, we are honored to host Devdutt Pattanaik, one of India's most influential cultural thinkers and storytellers. Devdutt has spent decades revealing the relevance of mythology in modern life, in leadership, management, governance, and in the personal journeys we each undertake. His newest book, Escape the Bakasura Trap, Let Contentment Fuel Your Growth, continues this powerful work, inviting us to rethink ambition, success, and the myths that shape our choices. Guiding this conversation is Mathew Veedon, Managing Director of Accordion and a member of the IAAC board. Mathew is admired not only for his accomplished career in strategy and transformation, but also generosity and genuine kindness. A committed philanthropist, he embodies the grace of those who let their work shine without ever seeking the spotlight. Together, Mathew and Devdutt will explore how mythology can illuminate our modern dilemmas and how contentment, rather than conflict, can fuel true growth. Please join me in welcoming Devdutt Pattanaik and Mathew Veedon.
Thank you, Preeti, for the very kind introduction. And welcome Devdutt to New York.
Thank you.
Where greed is good. You've got the Wolf of Wall Street. You've got folks negotiating trillion-dollar pay packages. So your book is very, very timely. The Bakasura Trap. So maybe for the benefit of the folks in the audience who are not very familiar with Indian mythology, maybe if you could just set the stage on the character of Bakasura and the context of that.
Thank you so much. So Bakasura is a character in Indian mythology. He comes from an epic called the Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata was composed roughly 2000 years ago. So roughly at the time the Roman Empire was ruling the Mediterranean. So think of Roman Empire in the Mediterranean. That's roughly when the Mahabharata was put together. It's old stories, but they were actually put together 2000 years ago. And there's a minor character there, but a very popular character amongst children. It's called Bakasura. And the word Bakasura comes from Bhakshasur. Bhaksha is the one who eats. And it basically is a demon who loves to eat so much that he eats even the people who serve him. So it's not just the steak that is given to him. He'll eat the cutlery, and the waiter, and the cook, and still be hungry. It never ends. And I thought this is a great metaphor for the world we live in, where we are told constantly to seek more and more and more and more and more. And I think that was the starting point of the book too. Because I've been working with some of literally the richest and the most powerful people in the country. And the one thing I noticed is not one of them was happy. Which was strange, not one. I didn't come across one person. And even their children who don't have to work for a day for the rest of their 7 lives look miserable. And they are constantly, so that's what sort of fueled the book, and that's where this book came from.
And would that apply just in the sort of capitalistic context, or because you normally associate that?
I mean, the examples we give, right? We'll say Wolf of Wall Street, and immediately you think of an investment banker, or you think of Shark Tank. But it's not just that, it is also the activist. So it's not just the capitalist or the businessman or the professional, but it is also the activist, the one who wants to save the world. Because it never ends, right? They're constantly saving the world. So they're constantly finding reasons to save the world. and they get very disappointed if you say, I don't need rescuing. So this is the Bakasur who exists, it's the attention-seeking Bakasur. It is a Bakasur's appetite can be different things, not just money and power. It can be knowledge, an obsessive thinking of knowledge to the point that it's disproportionate. Where you become the mad scientist. Frankenstein monster is a story of someone who is not happy. He wants more and more. I want to be immortal. I want to think. So the word Bakasur is a metaphor for someone whose hunger for anything does not have an expiry date. So that's what it is.
So if I were to connect the dots between, say, for example, business and Bakasura, that's that endless hunger, because in economics there's a very popular term called the network effect.
Yes.
Because the winner takes all. So you do have the benefit of the network effect. So if you don't, even in a sort of a non-capitalistic context, it creates a challenge, right?
Yeah, so the thing is, this idea of winning and losing and the winner takes it all, these are metaphors. I mean, who said you are supposed to win in life? Who created this game? It doesn't exist in nature. In nature, what is success? If you're hungry, you find food, and that day you are successful. So for the predator, it is catching the prey. For the prey, it is escaping the predator. But that's it, right? You find the food or you don't become food. So we have now created this artificial language of winning and losing and being a loser and being a winner. And we come from those backgrounds. All of us come from those backgrounds, schools, colleges, where we are constantly told to be competitive. And as if winning a competition gives you meaning. But who said that? Who said winning a competition gives you meaning? So, what is mythology all about? Mythology is about the stories, the operating system of your mind. So these are operating systems that we have downloaded through culture. And it's an operating system which is telling me that I have to win. And I'm like, why? So it comes from that root thing, this why and when does it stop? When do you stop running? And either running away from something or running towards something. But first of all, why are you running? Because the operating system has told me I have to run. If I change the operating system, you'll stop running. And the human brain is so malleable that you can just change operating systems very, very easily. But we just don't want, nobody teaches us that. It's not that we don't want to do that. It's not part of our education system. Our education system has reified the race and said, you have to win or spend the rest of your life being a loser. And great literature is written about winners and losers, and you'll have these books in management where winners will always have their photograph taken to their. Have you seen the pose? They always have this sort of fist on it. And I'm like, why this? What does this mean? Why not like this or something like that? Something. Everybody has their face. Even Malala now has a face image with a. And I'm like, really? So.
By the way, talking about school, we both are classmates from high school.
It's a very old relationship.
Yes, it's a very old relationship, and this is going to amuse you. We went to a school called Our Lady of Perpetual Succor, and
we heard all the jokes.
Think about it for a boys' school, but we are at a literary festival, and succor is spelled S-U-C-C-O-U-R, which means help. So you got to perpetually help.
Now I think they've changed the name. I think
No. Last week I was there. I took a picture.
It's still that. Because we all go through this. Every time you tell which school you come from, you first say OLPS. And they'll say, tell the whole thing. And every time we cringe.
So going back to the book, in one of the pages you mentioned, we change because wisdom brings bliss, contentment, kindness, and an ecosystem of abundance around us. So when you think about wisdom, should we be worshipping Goddess Saraswati rather than Lakshmi and Durga?
So what is wisdom? We use the word wisdom very casually, but knowledge is of two types. One is an objective knowledge, which is ontological, and you use the word the truth for it, sort of. It's outside you. It is true whether you exist or you don't exist. That's one kind of truth. There's another kind of truth which is personal, which is completely subjective. It is what you feel is true, right? And that is the two truths that we deal with. Now in this room there are about 100 people. So there are 100 different subjective truths in this room. The truth does exist, but there is my truth which matters, your truth which matters, his truth which matters. And how do I, when I engage with you, am I talking about the truth or your truth? And it's a conversation between my truth and your truth. And wisdom is recognizing the multiple truths out there and expanding your mind by appreciating other people's truths. So it's important to define what is wisdom. Because we use the word wisdom as, Saraswati comes because knowledge, information, the graph which IT people came up with, which is not correct, but it's called data, information, knowledge, wisdom. And they make it in this very beautiful linear chart, but it doesn't capture the fact that subjective truth cannot be put on a graph. It's subjective. So you can't put X, Y, marking. You can't locate it in a number. So subjective truth is a very complex idea that we are not taught again in school. We are taught objective truth, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But we forget the mind and therefore wisdom. So my book is about wisdom. It is about, it's like meeting a very rich man and realizing he's still competing with his father or his mother. Or you meet this very rich woman who is still competing with her sister or her sister-in-law and is yearning for the number of likes that appear in your Facebook page and is botoxifying herself to death. And you feel sad because rather than having the joy that you've lived a great life, you have children, grandchildren, what you're worried about is the wrinkles on my face. And you feel a little sad because when you work with them, you realize you're dealing with children and their wealth is nowhere to be seen. And this could be in a bungalow, this could be in a private jet, this could be in a small slum. So for me, the wisdom is that, entering that space of people. So the stories are great. I can go on telling you stories from the Bakasura Trap. And the Bakasura Trap sort of focuses on Mahabharata a lot because I wanted a narrative structure to connect the dots. But it is an idea which is independent of Bakasura or Mahabharata or India or Bharat or Hindu. It's an idea. And I think ideas is what I would focus on.
Could you take a moment to just distinguish Indian mythology from Western mythology and Eastern mythology?
So, step back again, what is mythology? So let's define mythology. So, it's a word that people have tried very hard to say, Devdutt ji, aap isko kyun mythology bolte hain? For those who don't understand, why do you call it mythology? They get very irritated. And I said, precisely because it irritates you, I'm going to use it. Yeah, because that creates market. Market is created through irritation. But the point is, in the 19th century, in the Enlightenment, I'm sorry, I'm just going a little basics because, I've got an audience here, so let me explain the basics of it. In the Enlightenment era, when science becomes a big thing, the world was very binary. There's this or that, right? True or false. So you have a binary. And that was very good. It's called the modern era, where everybody said measurement is important. And when you measure things, you have a measurement, and then that measurement is truth. And that's how the modern era was born. So modern era was based on science, the skyscrapers of New York, all that was built around this modern idea. So the British came to India, they found people, not just India, they went to Asia, they went to Africa, they went to Americas, They went across the world and they saw people with different truths. They were saying that no, this is and they said no, there can only be one truth and everything else is false. So they created this. The question is, what is this one truth? And this is where the violence, even today you see this in America and you see it in Europe and especially the Western countries, is this obsession with one truth. Now, is this a religious truth or is it a secular truth or is it a scientific truth? So you have the right wing saying one truth, the left saying another truth, and the scientists coming with another truth. Is it biology, gender, sex, all those conversations that are happening. But if you shift it and say that every culture looks at truth differently, then the word myth appears. Because myth is somebody's truth. It is not everybody's truth which science is trying to create. It's not nobody's truth or the author's truth, which is a work of fiction. But it is somebody's truth. Some people believe in this. So some people in India believe in Hindu myth. Some people believe in Christian myth, and again simplifying it, right? We know that there's not one Christianity, there's no one Islam, there's no one Hinduism, but keeping it simple, the broad division between Indian myth and Western myth, I'm not even talking about Eastern myth, China has another structure, but the Western myth is based on you live only once, and there is one truth. So one God, one message, one way to live your life. At the end of your life, when you die, there is judgment day, Qayamat. Right? So in Islam it would be, if I do life the way God has told me to live my life, it is halal, and if I follow halal, I will go to Jannat. Simple. If I break the rule, it is haram, and I will go to Jahannam. The argument is what is right, what is wrong, what is haram, what is halal, and you can have many schools of thought. Is God merciful? Is he such a strict teacher? So Rasulullah? So those ideas are a very Western, linear, singular thing which influences most business practices. Where we have this idea of a vision statement, the idea that I have to achieve something in life, I have to follow the rules. So you have an auditor who is constantly checking whether you're haram or halal. Right? And there's judgment day which decides whether you get the promotion. So we all go through judgment day quarter by quarter. And there's Qayamat happening every time. And the angels and demons happening everywhere. Hindu mythology is rebirth. That's the code of India. Not just Hinduism but also Buddhism, Jainism. It's a rebirth. Which means you don't begin with tabula rasa. There is no zero sum. You don't begin with zero. You come with a balance sheet of debt and credit, debit and credit. And you're going to live your life balancing with your workbook. And so it's an accounting thing. So it's very much your world that you live in. Not a legal world, but an accounting world. And you're constantly, your debit is when you consume. So Bakasura is in debt because he's consuming. And credit is when you feed the other. So look at the Hindu rituals in a temple. It's always feeding. So it is called Naivedya. You offer food. But we've reduced it to a temple ritual. But if you think about in many of the Indian practices, you have the langar which emerges in Sikhism. Feeding is important. So this idea becomes very important in India. The feeding of the ancestors. Tarpana. Tarpana is what you give to the ancestors. So the Indian mythology is myth is an accounting framework with no full stop. You can have debit, you can have credit, you can have no debit, only credit, which is paradise, Varga. Only credit, so you'll enjoy life. You're born into a family full of fortune. You can have a lot of debit and no credit, Naraka. Anybody been in debt? Think of the debt collector coming to you, and that's the god of death. So it's the worst phase to be in. And then there is a world without debit and credit. Without debit and credit is moksha, is liberation. So it's an accounting framework. So accounting framework and legal framework.
So, as an accountant, when you think about balance sheets, you think about information, right? There's a record of debits and credits, and for information to exist, even in the universe, there needs to be some energy, some life form, and all of that. So, in the context of rebirth,
How does it?
Yeah, where's the energy? Because it
Yeah.
kind of
So what
doesn't
happens
stop.
is with mythology, it uses literature professors will be able to understand this far better, and it's the reason why STEM is a problem, because STEM doesn't teach you metaphor; it teaches you measurement. So the one part of we are so trained to focus on measurement, we forget metaphor. So when I say Bakasur, then people can argue, why are you saying male? Why don't you call it Bakasuri? And that's where you start losing the plot. Because you forgot what metaphor is. Metaphor is agnostic, but the idea, in order to communicate an idea, I construct a poetic thought. And so when I say rebirth, I don't mean there is a process and there's an engineer who will now engineer your life, because these are all mathematical terms. You have to look at it from a metaphorical idea. And what are our ancestors trying to communicate? They are saying that when you are born on earth, you inherit, if I use a Christian language to it, you inherit the sins of your father. If I were to use a very Christian vocabulary to explain the idea about the language can be anything. You can find similar phrases in Arabic or Korean, doesn't matter. But the point is, we are born into a world where the debit and credit system already exists. We belong to a family. Our family belongs to a clan belongs to a village. You are going to inherit the sins of everybody who managed New York. Yeah? Now, who is that? So we don't die. We leave behind our impressions, we leave behind our debit, we leave behind our credit. And when you and I die, we will leave behind a whole bunch of credit and debit for the next generation. And this never ends. And that's the meaning of the word Sanatan, which is now got a very, fiery meaning. But it basically means something which never changes. This is the model that is used in India. So it's not information in a technical, mathematical sense of the term, but it means that your child, you may give anything to your child, but it comes with its own balance sheet. You can give the child $1 million, and the child will say, but I'm not interested. What do you do with the child? Because you spend all your life earning the $1 million, you give birth to a child who right from childhood says, I don't care. And he gives you that Gen Z stare. Very scary. But almost spiritual. Because it just makes you feel invalidated. That your great race to win that $1 million has no meaning to that child. And that is what this world is. Once you start understanding your truth, my truth, that my hunger is not another person's hunger, we become nicer people. We calm down. We that person thinks differently. And I have to work, and in the days when, even today, there's arranged marriage, right? And the conversation which I have with young people who are getting married is that you don't know who's entering your house, no matter how much you've dated them. Because once marriage and the sense of ownership comes in, it's very different from being a guest in the house to being the owner of the house. And then you start seeing the boys and girls, because they're not being equipped. They don't know, most of them are single children. How do you deal with the other person's truth? So information that way is to recognize that we live in this ecosystem of debit and credit. And we are paying for the sins, and we... play a game with me. What is the opposite of the word sin?
Virtue.
Then it is vice, right? Virtue has an opposite word called vice. Sin does not have an opposite. Have you ever wondered about that? Language. Because what happens is, either you sin or you don't sin. It's a binary. You follow the law or you sin. So those who understand mathematics, it's not 0, 1 in the Indian thought, it will be a number line. A number line, where do you begin and where do you end? So when I write in English, although I use the word sin, in my books you will rarely find the word sin being written, or the word evil for that matter. It cannot be translated in any Indian language.
So it's more quantum.
It's more quantum. Right. It's quantitative. And China is another story. We should always not forget there's another world called China.
Since you brought the concept of the household and the $1,000,000. Let's look at it this way, because there's this path of detachment that hermits, and then there's that path of trying to get to heaven through detachment. But actually, for a householder, it is contentment, and it is sort of building the retirement nest egg, all of that,
Yes.
and so to pass it along. So is that FU money, if you will, is that redundant?
Yeah, very good concept. I really love the concept of, I think Taleb brought it up, that idea. But the point is to recognize that life is not just about you. You are a tree in the forest. And your life does matter. Every tree around us is fighting for its survival. Right? Every animal is fighting for its survival. Even your pet dog is fighting for attention. We all want something in life to feel alive and complete and fulfilled. So that's natural. The question is expiry date. And that's the question. When do you say enough? Which is not a conversation anymore. It's not a conversation because we are telling, stay hungry, stay foolish, die dissatisfied. What a terrible thing to tell. It's like a flaw in the operating system. They've put some code out there कि मरते दम तक मैं जुनून में रहूंगा. And I'm like, how sad. So the point is, so I'll give you 3 archetypes to make it simple. Right? Again, mythological. Because sometimes I get carried away by ideas and I forget that the magic of mythology is in the stories. Right? So story is it's the visualization. So I'm going to give you 3 archetypes. There is Indra, the king of the gods. He lives in Svarga, and the translation of the word Svarga is paradise, not heaven. Paradise. Paradise comes from the word paradiso, which basically means a walled garden. Walled garden. Here he has everything he desires. He has the wish-fulfilling tree, the wish-fulfilling cow, the wish-fulfilling jewelry. He has got the wish-fulfilling pot, the cornucopia, which is bursting with food. He has everything that he desires. He has got the apsaras dancing for him, the gandharvas making music. He is living the life. And he has, imagine living a party with, there are no CCTV cameras. Nowadays we will be sensitive about this, right? So the ultimate life. But Indra is always described as an unhappy god. He is never worshipped in a single temple in India. He has everything, but he is insecure. And his throne is always shaking. Indra ka singhasan dagmagata hai. That's the phrase which is used. Very sound, it's that dagmagata. That sound itself makes you feel, and he's insecure. So he has everything, he is insecure. Second archetype, Shiva. He stays on a mountain made of stone covered with snow where nothing grows. Nothing grows. There is no vanaspati. There is no vegetation. Now, if there is no vegetation, if there is nothing to eat, how will you survive there? So, you just go and you can Google it on your cameras. You just focus the photograph of Shiv Parivar, Shiva's family. And it's an image of a family photograph, like father, mother, and their 2 kids. Each one having their own vehicle, right? Somebody has a Mercedes, somebody has a BMW. Very, very independent children. But look at the animals over there. There is Ganesha has a rat. What do who eats a rat? Snake. Have you seen the snake somewhere? It's around Shiva's neck. And who eats snakes? There's a peacock, which is there with Kartikeya. Or you think of Shiva is sitting on a bull. And imagine a child looking at it, that's a bull. What does it eat? Grass. But where is there grass? There is no grass in Mount Kailas. How can such a picture exist? So it's an artwork which is communicating, but we never teach our children these are puzzles. If you solve this puzzle, you'll realize they're telling you of a world where there is no hunger. When there is no hunger, there is no predator, there is no prey. There is no rat. The rat is there but doesn't search for the modak which has to be eaten. There is no snake which is afraid of the peacock. So that's the second archetype, a world without hunger. And then comes the third world. So here there's contentment, but there's something missing. And that's what I'm saying. I've built a nest for myself. I am content. But what about the people around me? They are unhappy. So you have Vishnu as a third archetype. which is talked about a god who lives in an ocean of milk. And here's the ocean of milk is a metaphor. Milk is a metaphor for wealth. And here's an ocean of milk, but he's called Daridra Narayan, the poor Vishnu. Why? Because he doesn't cling to anything. He is, to use a financial language, and that will work in New York, I guess. He has a lot of returns because you see, he has helped so many people, they are all in his debt. So Hindu mythology does not talk of charity. Charity is frowned upon. It's always investment. Short-term investment, long-term investment. High-risk investment, low-risk investment. But investment. And everybody, and the investee is in debt. And if he doesn't repay the debt, he will live again and again and again and again till he repays the debt. And Vishnu is not in a hurry because rebirth. You can live forever. There is no escape till you repay that loan or that investment. And so the returns come in the form of the goddess Lakshmi. But what does he say? He says, I don't need her. What do I do? Reinvest it in the market. And so the wealth is flowing in his direction. But he doesn't need it. And I think that's a state of mind where you say that I have 1,000 rupees in my pocket, but I'm content with the 10 rupee meal. What do I do with the remaining 990 rupees? I'll give it to my children. Okay, fine. How much will you give your children? You give it to your child 990 rupees and he'll say, that's it? I wanted 9,999 rupees. So the child is unhappy for the rest of his life. And the father is content with a 10 rupee meal. Because the hunger of the son, you can never anticipate the hunger of those you leave behind. You cannot anticipate anybody's hunger, but you can keep reinvesting in the market. So contentment allows you to be a great investor. Someone who doesn't do charity. So this book, I get, one of the things that irritates me a lot when I hear the word gratitude. I am grateful. I said, that's cheap. Can you be generous? Because gratitude is just a word. Thank you for giving me money. Generosity is, someone invested in me, I have to pay back. And I think this cyclical nature of wealth has been forgotten. And I think America at some time, I was just commenting to a friend of mine, some of the best institutions in America are built by these very fabulously rich families who built universities, who build public spaces, gardens, institutes. They call it charity. But think about it. If you thought about it as investment, which you will not, in your lifetime you will not see the return. But the return will happen one day. The olive tree only bears fruit after 3 or 4 generations. But we are not taught this in our schools and colleges. It's all about, because you are so STEM oriented, we want quick return. So, quick attention span. I want return in this lifetime. You will never get a love in this lifetime. Calm down. So, that is something that people forget, that you will not get Indra's paradise in this lifetime.
Which, there's a very interesting character in your book, Shweta. Yes. Very pious, does all the right things, ends up in paradise, but is still hungry.
Is still hungry.
So maybe if you could...
So the funny thing is, whenever I'm writing a book, which I feel I'm in the zone, which they say, you're in the zone, and the vibe is right, I will come across books and stories which align with what I'm writing. And I never knew the story before I started writing this book, and I stumbled upon it. It's from the Valmiki Ramayana. And Valmiki Ramayana has this very, very bizarre story of Agastya Muni. So the sage Agastya, every day goes for his ablutions to a river, and he goes there and he takes his bath, and then he sees a very peculiar sight. He sees a man coming in this Vimana, in his own private jet. It's called Vimana, is a private jet. He comes there flying, and he comes to this riverside, and Agastya is watching him. He looks beautiful, he's handsome, he looks very happy, but he looks famished, like he's not eaten. And then suddenly a dead body appears floating in the river, which looks exactly like him. And he eats this flesh like a cannibal. And he eats it, and then he burps in satisfaction. Then he goes back to his private jet, Vimana, and he goes back to Swarga. And Agastya notices the cycle happening again and again and again, until Agastya goes to him and says, who are you? What are you doing? You seem to be coming from heaven, but what are you doing? You're doing this cannibalistic feast of your own self, which is even more peculiar. And that is when he's told, Shivata says, you know what, I was a very good person. I helped people, I did a lot of things, and I lived a pious life. I didn't hurt anyone. And because I lived a pious life, I had no debt. And because I had no debt, I went to the paradise. I lived in this beautiful place and I lived there, but I have no credit. You see, I didn't feed anyone in the world when I was alive. And because I didn't feed anyone in the world, the God said, while you are in paradise, everything is good, but you'll always be hungry. Because there's no food, because your hunger is, you need to consume something. You have not fed anyone, so there's no one to feed you. So for the rest of eternity, you'll go down hungry, but now since you're such a good person, you're not going to kill other people, right? That's not going to happen. So by your own good deeds, your own body will reproduce itself and you'll eat yourself endlessly. So paradise will be a place where you'll be hungry for your own body only because you did not feed anyone in your lifetime. You didn't invest in others. You're a nice person, you're a good person, you're not a bad person, but you invested in no one. Now this story is from the Valmiki Ramayana, it's not part of Amar Chitra Katha. Because the censor board will say, how can you show cannibalism? But it's a metaphor. And it's so rich in visualization. It's like the story of Narcissus or something like that. It sort of tells you something very deep that the scholars are trying to communicate. They're not trying to entertain you. They're very clearly wanting to enlighten you.
Now, there's a lot of effort at immortality, trying to live forever. One of the interesting lines, and that is a kind of a trap in itself, right? And in the Mahabharata, I think Yudhishthira says this. The most wondrous thing on earth, he says, is every day men die, the rest live as if they are immortal.
Yeah. It's a very famous line from Yudhishthira. See, the idea of immortality is something which happens because the greatest, our existential thing is the fact that we are all mortal. And if you want to make someone rich and powerful insecure, all you have to tell them is this. Sir, if you disappear right now, will the world collapse? Now think of all those powerful people right now which you must have read in your Twitter feed today. If they disappeared, nothing will change in the world. A new scoundrel will emerge. There is no shortage of scoundrels. That world doesn't change. The forest does not depend on a single tree, however beautiful, however fruit-bearing it is. But we believe we are so special, the world needs to exist without us, and therefore immortality becomes a very big thing. So, the Chinese emperor, the first Chinese emperor, wanted to be immortal. And I don't know if you've traveled to China, there's this famous, those guards who are hiding this mercury well, and this where they say that he wanted to be immortal. The Chinese idea comes to India around the 2nd, 3rd, 4th century, and it plays a very important role in Tantra. So one of the words for Tantra is Chinnachara. So it's the way of the Chinese. So there was a lot of exchange which is not well documented, but there is clearly a lot of conversations happening with the Chinese, and you have the concept of Chiranjeevi, the immortal ones in India. And the immortal ones in India are all cursed gods. They are cursed to see other people's mortality. So that none of them are like blessed to be immortal. Immortality is a curse which is going to be there because you will see all your loved ones die and you'll enjoy your life, but you have to accept the fact that they will die. And therefore this immortality as an idea is a global, it's nothing new. Right now you're using Botox and oxygen tanks and you see them. They look like these athletes. You should be fit. Like I meet people saying that you should lose weight. I said, why? I said, I invested because the best thing about senility and Alzheimer's is other people's problem. So I long for Alzheimer's because you will wash my bum. I'm not going to do anything. I don't have to suffer. So why do you see it as a tragedy? It's a triumph. And you see, think about it. And this, a neurologist told me this. He said, Devdutt, dementia is other people's problem. It's not the patient's problem. You feel bad because your father doesn't recognize you or your mother doesn't recognize you. But that's your problem. They are in happy land. They've gone. So this idea of immortality is not discussed enough. It doesn't mean give up the world. So Vishnu is the beloved. He dances, he sings, he has jungle mein mangal. Have fun all the time. It's a great party because jungle won't go away. Mangal is optional. Mangal means auspicious. Jungle is the forest where there is always fear. Mangal is the safe space. Safe spaces are not just safe, which is very boring. Safe, fun place with adequate number of all the fun things that you can imagine. Right? The boyfriend, the girlfriend, all the chemicals that you want, but for a finite number of times. So jungle mein mangal. But mangal will come and go. It is you who create the auspiciousness. You create the joy. You create the space of happiness. But it goes away. So I think when I see the immortals, I feel sad for them. Because they are not able, because see, you enjoy something in the fact that it will go away. And there are so many poets in this room, right? What's the best part of poetry? The sentence will end, the phrase will end. They don't use commas, full stops because they want it to linger in your mind. And that's where magic happens. Imagine you go to a meal, the meal ends, and then you wait for the next meal. So I think immortality is overrated by people with no imagination. And it's not taught. So they should call me.
I want to touch upon another topic, which is jealousy and judging others and all of that. Because even in Ram Raja, it was land of
jealousy. Yeah.
Yes, because it was land of milk and honey and everything. But still, the subjects, they were judging.
Yes.
Right.
So see, this is what happens with the obsession with perfection. So Ram Raja is, Indian epics are written at another level of structure. So I study structure a lot and I love the structure of the Ramayana. I've been reading it for 30 years and I keep giving layers after layers and I don't bother with the language, it's just the structure of the storytelling. They're telling you of a period where everything is perfect, like you live in this land of milk and honey, so that's Ram Raj. And what are people doing? They're gossiping. So why are you gossiping? What are you gossiping about? You're gossiping about the king, the queen's character. Did she or didn't she? You can imagine a tabloid right now, right? All the Fox News having a discussion. Kya hua tha Ashok Vatika mein? What happened under the tree? What happened in the garden? Was Lanka supposed to be a secret island far, far away where rich people go? But the thing is, you start creating. Why would you do that if you are content? Why would you gossip about your benefactor's wife? And that story, when it's being told, and it's so remarkable, the original story just says it's public gossip. That's about 2,000 years ago. 500 years ago, a poet comes up with a new idea. 500 years ago, the poet comes up with a new idea and he says, Dhobi, the washerman. Why? Because the stain of reputation cannot be washed away. So look at the way the character is chosen by the storyteller. He says, no, I will not use anybody in the village, in the palace. I will use a dhobi, a washerman, saying the king's reputation has been soiled. Or another version of the story, the folk version, talks of a sweeper, the one who cleans. So they're using these metaphors to explain the king's, in fact, one of the versions of the story is that Sita is asked, did you see Ravan? And Ravan, Sita says, I never saw his face, I didn't want to see his face. And the women of the palace are like, tell us, surely you must have seen something, tell us about it. And he's like, oh well, I saw his shadow when we were going above the sea. So they draw the shadow. So she draws 10 dots, saying that this is how his head looked, and this is 10 lines. She does like a stick figure. And she walks away, not thinking too much about it. She must have drawn it to the floor. And everybody comes and says, oh, she remembers everything about him. Look, she longs for him, that in her private quarters, she is doing the image of the man who abducted her. See how the story gets darker and darker and darker. So, if you're discontented, you start feeding on other people's happiness. And you know the jealousy that you can't bear to see Ram and Sita happy. That they're just happy couple, they love each other, they adore each other, they're very different from each other. I can't bear this. I want that to be taken away. So Ramayana is a story of lovers who will never be together. One is within the cage and one is outside the cage. And I use this word in workshops. Who is inside the cage? Ram is inside the cage. And Sita is outside. So who is lucky? Well, that's not the way the story is told. We are constantly telling our children, look how unhappy she is. How about how unhappy he is? Heartbreak has no gender. But we gender it. So this is how the idea comes across. This jealousy, the judgment. If you're not content, you will be jealous, you'll be competitive, you will be judgmental of how others should live. So the moment you meet someone who is judgmental, you know they are not content. The moment you meet someone who is judgy and jealous and bitchy, and you're like, oh, not content. Indra Sabha. And that's, once you do that, you calm down because it irritates you, right? You meet these people, you don't like it. But the moment you realize they're discontented, unhappy people, you calm down. And I think that is what I want the book to do, to make you aware that it's not about the rich person, because jealousy can come in a poor family. So Ramayana is very clear, it is talking not about the wealthy and affluent people. It's saying cruelty is not just upper class. Cruelty is also lower class. So this idea of a socialist or communist idea that poor people are good, rich people are bad, is a very childish understanding of human psychology. Our wealth doesn't make us. We can be the kindest person in a poor home, and you can be the kindest person in a rich home. Your wallet size doesn't decide your character, is what the story is.
Which brings us to actually one of Ravana's dying words to Ram on the one lesson humans should remember. We are naturally drawn to things that hurt us, never to things that help us. Is he rationalizing?
So it's like somebody telling me, do you prefer chips or the gym? And what do you think wins? So on my deathbed I tell the children, go to gym every day. It is the worst mistake I did. And that's what basically Ravan is saying, that you are educated. What does Ravan represent or embody? Privilege. He is born in a good family, but he was jealous of his brother, so he steals his brother's wealth. He's rich, he's powerful, he demands loyalty at any cost. Sounds very familiar. And he wants that girl to love him. You have got a harem of women, but you want the heart of the woman who refuses to love you. So I'm like, oh, so sad, my life is so tragic. Like Ravan's story is fantastic. I did a workshop for children, not children, but young adults to write his Ramayana, and one young man walks up to me and says, I feel, and look how the people start looking at stories, that Mahiravan, his son who is living under the earth, is actually a closeted gay man. So I'm like, how did that come about? He said, it's hidden, no? Who is hidden? So I'm like, okay. And he says, who is the favorite son? Meghanad, the one who lives in the sky with the clouds, and he's the beloved son who has a beautiful wife, and the hidden son. So you suddenly see people seeing these patterns, and he said, no, I feel Ravan rejected the son he couldn't handle. So you're looking at him and I'm not saying right, and they say, is it right, sir? Because they're looking for some ontological truth about Ramayana. And I'm like, well, it's your truth. Does it make you a nicer person? It's not whether it is true by itself, but is your analysis making you a better human being or making you a horrible human being? Are you in debit or credit? And I think that's the conversation that I have with people. Then I see the operating system sort of shifting a bit. Some shifts in the operating system.
I just want to touch upon one more character and then a little bit of a book reading and then open it up for Q&A. I didn't know about this character until I read the book, which is Hidimbi. She's the sister of
Hidimba.
Sorry. She's the sister of Bakasura and the first wife of Bhima, right? Sort of, they're for the Pandavas, right? And
so when you talk about So when you talk about the wives of the Pandavas, we always think of Draupadi. But traditionally in Indian family, who's the first bride who enters your house? And that's not Draupadi. Draupadi is not the first bride who enters the house. It is Hidimba. Hidimba really, and her temple is there in Uttarakhand where it's worshipped. But the idea that the first bride is not acknowledged because she is from the other community. She's a Rakshasa woman. Her brothers are all these cannibals. Bakasur, Jatasur, Kirmira. The names also look like this. Batka, Jata, Kirmira, Hidimba. It's very raw sounding words. And she is the sister who finally realizes fighting is not going to solve everything. So she comes to them and says, you know what, stop killing my brothers, I'll feed you. You want food, right? And my brothers are crazy, they're going around killing people, I will stop them. But can I just feed you? And she takes care of the entire family and she's feeding them all the time. But she's not remembered. Not even remembered by the readers, because we don't remember her, nor the storyteller who gives her the dignity she deserves. So for me, the invisibility of Hidimba is the content person. Does she crave attention? Is she like, oh my God, I'm going to write poetry? Loss. Because I lost something. Because this becomes this dramatic, it's very beautiful, right? Because shok se shlok nikalta hai. From pain comes poetry. But maybe she has no poetry. She's happy cooking and feeding and eating and living a very ordinary life, saying, I had a lover called Bhima. There were many others after that. But the press will not approve.
Wonderful. Let's take a moment and maybe if you could read a passage from the book and encourage all of you to buy the book. It's available on Amazon. And if you scan the QR code afterwards, you can actually directly download.
Yeah, we try to ship copies, but it's a nightmarish process. It's easier this way. So I'm just reading something which I feel is relevant about the nature of God. Right, so I'm going to, it's slightly long, is it okay? So I'm just going to read. The epic Ramayana is often assumed to be a tale of Ram's greatness. It is in fact the story of Ram from birth to death. The epic Mahabharata is not a tale of war or victory, but the story of Bharat kings, of Pandavas, Kauravas and Yadavas, from birth to death. There is no climax in these stories. There is only death. Nature favors the youth. Once they reproduce, it is time to replace them with the next generation. Humans fantasize of a world where they'll never be replaced. We tell fairy tales of happily ever after, a future without aging, disease, decay and death. But the hair grays, the skin wrinkles. The wise kings of the Buddhist and Jatak tales often give up the household at this stage. Not all kings are wise. Some cling to the throne. In Greek myths, Cronus eats all his children until he's killed by his son Zeus. Zeus, now king, fears he will be replaced one day, and so spends all his time keeping humans busy in wars so that they do not aspire for the Olympian throne. In the Mahabharata, when a father called Yayati grows old, rather than retiring gracefully, he asks his sons to give up their youth so that he can stay young. The eldest son refuses and so is disinherited. The youngest son agrees and so is made the heir. By the time the youngest son inherits the throne, he is an old man. His youth having been exploited by his own father. While some Brahmas cannibalize the youth of their children, others try to fix all problems of their children. Leave the world so perfect that there are no problems for the children to solve. In the Ramayana, Dashrath, who produced 4 sons with 3 queens, ends up dying alone, with no son by his side. He wonders what will happen to his kingdom despite all efforts. He cannot control the future. In the Mahabharata, Bhishma, the grand patriarch, has the gift of choosing the time of his death. He refuses to die as he feels his grandchildren are not quite capable of managing the family inheritance. He is eventually pinned to the ground by arrows, unable to move, forced to witness a brutal massacre between his grandchildren. He is reminded that the march of time cannot be stopped. Problems that appeared before him and in his lifetime will repeat again, and the new Brahmas will respond as the old Brahmas did. Some will focus on technology to create and distribute food. Others will improve the understanding of hunger. Every rise will have a fall. Every fall will have a rise. Seasons will change. Gods will come and go.
This is Srini, and really enjoyed that session very much. You talked about comments sometimes irritating people. The myth and the idea of myths borrowed from other civilizations, or like, the myths that exist for us, or that might exist in Greek mythology, or what's your own view on that? I mean, curious, were they, adopted from each other as stories got written, or how do you just, what doesn't matter?
Stories, right? We started believing all stories are ontological. They're not. They belong in the mind of the people who tell the stories for whom it is meant for. And the nature of myth is you always think other people's stories are false. That is the nature of myth. So where do you locate faith? Is faith true or false? Tell me, where do you locate faith? Vishwas. Is it true or false? It's always true for you, it's not true for others. You believe money will solve all problems, somebody doesn't believe it. So myths come from those belief spaces. It is the belief of a people. What has happened is we have now decided to have wars over it, that my truth is better than your truth. My truth is real and your truth is not. And when people tell me, and in India it's very funny, when people tell me, I think you should call it history. You know what I tell them? So you're actually telling me I should agree that the Prophet Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged stallion? And they go quiet. Because the moment you say that it is history, not just your myth will become history, other people's myth will also become history. Which means now I have to agree that the Prophet did travel on a winged stallion to heaven and negotiated how many times we are supposed to worship him on earth. Is that metaphor or real? How do you want to see it? The inability to recognize metaphor is the reason our society is in such a terrible place right now. And metaphor is a bad word. So how do you provoke people? Myth. Myth comes from the word mythos. It's a Greek word which means akhyana. The Sanskrit word for it is Akhyan Shastra. Akhyan Shastra doesn't have drama. Mythology gets me the money. So.
We'll take one at the back there.
A bit more.
Sure.
So just as the best movie, the most successful movies of the current times are all the Marvel superhero movies. Why can't we take the leap of faith here and say that Vedvyas and Valmiki wanted to take a simple story, what actually happened, what we call it history, and add their embellishments to make it more mass appealable. and therefore add all the various exaggerations like a flying monk, for example. No, I'm not. But that's what Valmiki made us believe the way it is, right?
No, history.
Yes. So I'm just saying, why can't we, especially people like you who have such exposure, try to get to the kernel of the truth of these so-called mythologies and get a possible rational history out of it?
First of all, humans are not rational. So get that out of your system. Every time you see a politician fight, tell me how much rationality does he use? You don't win elections by being rational, by building bridges. You win elections by telling, khatre mein hai. You control women by saying, don't step out, you will be raped. That's how you control people. There's nothing rational about it. So we have overestimated rationality. So step one, you are not a rational person. You are an emotional person. Your identity comes from emotions. And why are you letting other people define the rules of the game? Why should I follow their game? They play soccer. We play cricket. Cricket makes more money. I have no desire to teach cricket to America. I don't need a Marvel superhero like Hanuman. Because what is superhero? Superhero is someone who says, outsource your problems to me. I will solve your problems. That is Paigambarvad. That is the prophet model of thinking. That others will solve your problem. Hinduism is about Atmagyan. Figure out the Hanuman in your heart and stop looking at him as a divine help desk. How do you teach children to discover Hanuman in your heart? By making him look like an ape in a Hollywood picture. Please explain how. How do you make a child wise by showing the gods as gundas? Fighting and butchering people. Because solution of every magical movie is violence. So right now there is a very famous folk regional movie about a god, tribal god coming and fighting. And I'm like, at the end of the day, a culture which says Shanti, Shanti, Shanti says, I will only have Shanti when I've drunk your blood. But when you drink someone else's blood, you are in debt. And you have to repay that debt in the next life, and in the next life, and in the next life. So let's not trivialize Hinduism by trying to make it Marvel comics. And you are trivializing. I'm sure. In your view, you are not. But to be equated with Marvel comics, Vyas and Valmiki, really? I'm sorry.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Because I read some of your other books, and this you talk a lot about Indra versus the Asuras, and I know that the modern translation of Asura, they call it demon, but that feels really simplistic.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if you could talk a bit more about that Indra versus Asura dynamic and why Vishnu always helps Indra, even if Indra is flawed.
So the stories of Indian philosophy, say a Quran or a Hadith, when you read the Quran and the Hadith, they are very prescriptive. So you go to the mullah and say that, tell me, is this okay? I'm constantly seeking approval of my action. It's a very different model. It works. It began in Mesopotamia. It's a pre-Islamic practice. It's nothing to do with Islam. It is there in Babylon. It's there in Sumeria. It's a very, very old model of management. Even in companies follow that, right? We go to the HR to say, is this okay? Right? The HR will approve what conduct is acceptable. You go through training programs for diversity and inclusion. These are all based on the Hadith model. It's a classical Islamic model. Pre-Islamic model. I mean, I should be careful nowadays to say Islamic model. Sumerian model. It is a very, 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 very old West Asian model. But if you look at Indian philosophy doesn't have that, right? So keep that in mind. So it's not about, so there is no binary called Deva and Asura at its foundation. So they're trying to communicate an idea. What are they trying to communicate? Why is a god taking sides? Let's ask the question, why does God take sides? Why does Krishna support Arjun, not the Kauravas? Like he's taking sides, right? So we start thinking, and because we are not thinking carefully, and he's constantly saying, I am the divine, I am infinite, I am infinite. If you're taking infinity, there are no boundaries. But yet he's taking sides, so there are two stories, right? So look at the Asura Deva. Rather than explaining Deva and Asura, I'm going to explain something from the Bhagavad Gita, right? And that will help you solve the problem of Devas and Asura. The same model applies everywhere. So the first paragraph of the Bhagavad Gita is very interesting. It is Dhritarashtra who is blind, looking at his charioteer Sanjaya and saying, Sanjaya, tell me what is happening in Dharmakshetra Kurukshetra, this place of Dharma, this great place, battlefield. And this is where Sanskrit becomes important. Where he says, Mama Putra, my sons, Mama, my sons. In the translation also I can write like, my sons and Pandu's sons. Now, if you have not read the Mahabharata, this looks like an ordinary sentence, right? My sons and Pandu's sons. But if you know the story, you know that Pandu is his brother. And we have in India words for brothers' sons. So he should be saying my sons and my nephews. Or my brother's sons. But he doesn't say that. He has othered them. He has othered them in this one paragraph and says me and the outsider. Next chapter, after that when Arjun is there, Arjun is coming in the middle of the battlefield and saying, how can I fight the Kauravas? They are my relatives. So it's the very opposite of what Dhritarashtra is saying. The Kauravas are looking at Pandavas as outsiders, but over here, the Pandava, or rather the representative of the Pandava says, but we are the same family. How can I kill family? How can I kill family? He keeps using the word family, Kula. And the word Kula is used over 24 times in the second chapter of the Mahabharata. It disappears in the third chapter. You don't find the word Kula after that in the remaining 17 chapters. The word Kula barely appears. Because when Krishna is answering, he's saying Kula is, you have transcribed and talked about your family. Are you okay killing a stranger? Is it okay to kill strangers for property? You're okay, it's bad to kill family. But is it okay to kill a stranger for property? Right now we have interesting wars going on in America and globally. Who is allowed to be killed? Whose killing is okay? Is killing family bad or killing a stranger bad? And then Krishna says, when he describes his infinite form, he says, tell me where do I draw the border? On what basis do I say your guru, you are right and wrong? And everybody says, but Arjuna is a good guy. No. The difference between the Asuras and the Devas is the Asuras have stopped listening. And the Devas are willing to listen. They may not agree. See, we use the word, I agree with you, I disagree with you. And Krishna says, it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with me. It's your debt. Agreement is a very West Asian concept. Indian concept is tera rin hai. Your debt, not my debt. If you kill people, you are in debt. Whether you kill family or you kill strangers in defense or offense, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, Krishna knows that he has not killed a single Kaurava. And the mother of the Kaurava curses him. That your entire family will die like dogs and you'll witness it. So you have done nothing. You tried to stop the war. You were a negotiator. You stood by a friend of yours who was listening to your advice. And you get the curse. Dharma sthapana yuge yuge. He who tries to establish dharma always gets cursed.
One question.
So I was closing. So Deva Asura is that. Yeah.
So, me and my husband, we started watching the Devdutt show that you have, and you talked about construct in that show, and we were like, our minds were blown by that. And then today you talked about your own truth. So it all felt very similar, and seems like it's the philosophy that you shared. And I'm curious, like, was there a point where you yourself realized that this is...
So everything that I tell you comes from the scriptures. for me. Nothing I say comes outside the scripture. My language comes from outside the scriptures, but my understanding comes from within the scriptures. Right? The thing is, it sounds postmodern, but the problem with postmodern thinking is that they don't respect other people's views, which is one of the reasons cancel culture was so big. If you disagree with me, I cancel you. While this model says, I'm not seeking your agreement, I'm not seeking your understanding, this is who I am, and I'm curious about why you disagree with me. Why are you disagreeing with me? Because aham brahmasmi, I am also like you, I have insecurity, you have insecurity, we both are going to die. There is no option, whether you are left, right, center, east, west, north, south, we'll all die. So let's have this conversation. So this is really framed by this very famous line, Jagat Mithya, Brahma Satyam. All of us live in limited truths. Only the divine has access to the limitless. And we are not divine. Yeah?
So, thank you so much. Rakesh, did you want to say some closing words? Share your views.
Thank you. So thank you all for coming on a Sunday morning. We wanted to get Devdutt here now for quite a few years, and it took the efforts of Mathew and Elizabeth Veedon. They are Sajjana board members. I mean, they are the best board members. I can't tell you how noble they are. Devdutt is obviously an incredible introducer, a guide into the world of magic that he mentioned. Please buy his book, and I'll give you my reason why in a second, but please buy his book. Read it, comment on it, and then go back. Let him be your guide into the magnificent world of Katha. Just use him as a guide. Now why? What is my pitch on top of Devdutt's? If you look at the architecture of today that Preeti Urs, our fabulous literary festival director, has structured, you're going to meet three great characters. The opening batsman was Bakasura. The middle order will be young. Death. Sadhguru will talk about that. And then at the end will be Mother Ganga. And today is structured to be the day of wonder. I would urge you not to get hung up on, is it right, is it true, is it binary? But go into that state of magic that they talk about. Why is wonder so important? Devdutt mentioned that phrase, Shoka gave birth to Shloka. It's not true only of Ramayana. It's not true only of Ramayana. Panchtantra was written because the king was in pain.
That is children are
That is children. These princes are children, and princes are idiots. So this Brahmin came and said, give me your kids. Katha Sarit Sagar, the collection, the ocean of the river of stories, was written because a queen watched in anguish the suffering of her husband, the king, who eventually committed suicide. I don't even want to tell you how he killed himself. Our stories were concerned about the problem of human pain. And how did they try to empower us? They tried to empower us not through entertainment, not through escapism. They tried to empower us by putting our mind in a state of wonder. Because in a state of wonder, magic happens and possibilities open up. Optionality opens up. The goddess of optionality is Goddess Kubchika. Go read up about her. An incredible goddess, paralyzed at birth from the neck down. So we're going to put you in the state of wonder so that you go back into the real world empowered that our storytelling, the storytelling that Devdutt is bringing to life to the world, to audiences, have real power for us in our daily living, in our daily pain, because it will enable us to figure out how to create optionality. And the last conclusion is this. Somebody asked, what's the difference between the Devas and the Asuras? My ending line. Asuras always go and say, give me power, give me this weapon, give me this thing so I can never die. You know what the Devas do? They go, they cry and say, koi upay dijiye. Upay, upay. We're going to train you to upay today. Thank you, Devdutt. Magnificent. Unbelievable. One practical thing. One practical. After you mobbed him, just to take a piece of his hair as a souvenir. All of you have to leave. All of you have to check out from here right away after that, and then you have to come back into the building through security. With that, Mathew, thank you.